Ohayo gozaimasu. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The Japanese greeting is a hat tip to Sumie, the illustrator of Botanical Shakespeare. And here we are, back at home, back in New York City, and we have the core team with us today. We have Hannah from Lincoln, Lincolnshire, and we have Nikki B to do a little special section for us. Because if you watched, first of all, we breathe, and we clean out the organs, and we clear out the brain fog by finding an herb or some plant to crush and sniff. And look how well my spearmint is still doing, and my peppermint. I think it's time. And they both smell so distinctly different, you know. It's what learning is. That was the line for last week, because we did with another member of somebody who's slowly becoming part of our core team, Drew Bolander, our historical drinkery master, and we haven't had him do, aside from the first one, the actual historical drinks that are in Shakespeare, like metheglin we did, or if you've ever even heard of metheglin, which is kind of a wine made out of botanicals, not grapes. And so, anyway, so we have the core team back, and last whatever you want to call it, was Love's Labor's Lost, because that's a back to school, because they're all going to school and they're going to concentrate on their education. So we're kind of continuing that theme because it's October, and it's not only kind of back to school, but it's the harvesting of all the seeds that you have planted in the spring or whenever in your life, and also the time of planting new seeds. And the thing about, there's this kind of mindset that you go to school and then you're done. But the wise person, and what we try to do here, is help everyone anchor in wisdom. I'm doing this wrong. Anchor in wisdom and anchor in healing, which is why we call it Shakespeare therapy and herbal healing or cocktail healing or whatever the focus is at the time. Because their tenet, the Renaissance tenet, was learning through delight. So smelling herbs and tasting things and all the five senses, all these things are delightful, and getting your brain cranked up. And so, here's another member of our core team. The cat is wondering why there are all these herbs in his normal spot on the couch. Like, what is this doing here? Anyway, so the line of the week is going to come from the piece that Nick is going to perform for us. And because, again, we're talking about harvesting, and we're talking about growth. You know, growth of the brain cells. Get those neural pathways fired up. You know, you can spark new ones. And this is why I do a line of the week. Just to get you listening to, or hearing or learning something you wouldn't normally hear in the kind of context of a whole play, whether you're reading it or watching it or going to the theater. So, and then the herbal part is like all these plants in Shakespeare, people did in nature before the pandemic, didn't really pay attention to it. It's that whole classic thing that I put in the introduction about how we don't really stop and smell the flowers. And so this is just 20 minutes of a quick hit of wisdom and healing to plant into the beginning of your week. Ooh, metaphor. Anyway, okay, so is Nick here? Here is Nikki B, our big Nikki B, who does all the graphics and everything, part of the core team. And I wanted him to read the Duke of Burgundy speech in Henry V. And when I give live talks, we often have somebody do it, either from the audience or somebody I've brought along. And the reason is it's a great speech for promoting learning and promoting growth. And it's long, as Shakespeare is known for. But anyway, we'll talk about it afterwards. Nick, you're on.
My duty to you both, on equal love, great kings of France and England, that I have labored with all my wits, my pains, and strong endeavors to bring your most imperial majesties unto this bar and royal interview, your mightiness on both parts best can witness. Since then, my office hath so far prevailed, that face to face and royal eye to eye you have congregated. Let it not disgrace me if I demand, before this royal view, what rub, or what impediment there is, why that the naked, poor, and mangled peace, dear nurse of arts and joyful births, should not in this best garden of the world, our fertile France, put up her lovely visage. Alas, she hath from France too long been chased, and all her husbandry doth lie in heaps, corrupting in its own fertility. Her vine, the merry cheerer of the heart, unpruned dies. Her hedges, even pleached, like prisoners wildly overgrown with hair, put forth disordered twigs. Her fallow leaves, the darnel, hemlock, and rank fumitory doth root upon, while that the coulter rusts that should deracinate such savagery. The even mead, that erst brought sweetly forth the freckled cowslip, burnet, and green clover, wanting the scythe, all uncorrected, rank, conceives by idleness, and nothing teems but hateful docks, rough thistles, kexies, burrs, losing both beauty and utility. And as our vineyards, fallows, meads, and hedges, defective in their natures, grow to wildness, even so our houses, and ourselves, and children have lost, or do not learn for want of time, the sciences that should become our country, but grow like savages, the soldiers will, that nothing do but meditate on blood, to swearing and stern looks, diffused attire, and everything that seems unnatural. Which, to reduce into our former favor, you are assembled, and my speech entreats that I may know the let, why gentle peace should not expel these inconveniences and bless us with her former qualities.
Thank you.
And then
Fantastic. Fantastic. I hope some of you came on late, you got on that, or you can watch the replay, and we'll put some funny visuals in at the end of the week. But thank you, Nick, so much for doing that. And now I'm going to pull out little lines for the line of the week, and then we're going to bring Hannah on. So thank you very much for showing up. First of all, when Shakespeare says the best garden of the world, look at all the hearts you're getting. When Shakespeare says best garden of the world, he's talking about England as much as France, but it could be anywhere. And then the other thing about peace, dear nurse of arts. So you need peace and quiet to create the kind of artistic environment, right? And then it's talking about we're just warring all the time, and that doesn't necessarily have to be. One of the reasons I also picked this speech is because it's from Henry V, and October is Henry V month because St. Crispin's Day, we band of brothers, that famous speech is October 25th. So that's another reason why it's a great speech to start off this sort of focus on learning in a wintry way and growing, but the line of the week, and the other line, I call it Shakespeare's eco-STEM speech, because he's talking about all the children and how we're laying waste and wearing crappy clothes and not learning, and the sciences that should become our country. So it's very much encouraging the whole STEM thing, but also to plant and grow and take care of your country, your world, your environment. So it kind of encapsulates all that. But I love the line, the coulter rusts that should deracinate such savagery. And one of the fun things about Shakespeare is that it fills your mouth with these great words. I mean, it's almost like food. If you can wrap your mouth around it and say it, deracinate. I mean, I'm not encouraging fighting, but sometimes when in social media, when you get into, trolls and all these people get into the stuff, if you can throw words like that in there, it's not even a $5 word, it's like $100 word, just like I was to deracinate this conversation, Anyway, the coulter rust that should deracinate such savagery. We're wasting our time when we could be expanding, growing, learning, being peaceful, dressing better. I don't know. I just threw that in. I just noticed that line too. That's the other thing. You can constantly, when you're listening to something new, hear something you haven't heard before in quite the same way, which is why people go back and see Shakespeare over and over again, and different actors do it, because you always hear a new thing in a new way. Okay, soapbox over. We're going to bring Hannah on. And now we're halfway in Lincoln, Lincolnshire. Oh, it's cold. You're wearing a sweater.
It's chilly. It's sort of, it's definitely that sort of midpoint between kind of, it's that midpoint between sort of summer and the weather really starting to turn. So it's, yeah, chilly.
So
and rain.
Been teaching, which is why she hasn't been able to be with us, because they've been barraging her with all the stuff teachers have to do. But I see, do you have an apple? We're discussing apples today, and the sort of apple a day. And maybe I should have picked an apple line, because there are tons of them. We have many pages, and there are 6, or you could say 8 apples mentioned in Shakespeare: bittersweeting, pippin, palm water. Crab apple is on the cover of the book, because that's where all apples come from. They take splits of a crab apple, and then it becomes, I don't even know how many actually varieties of apple there are, and they're constantly making new ones. Somebody was showing me the Bramley the other day, and a Braeburn, and Granny Smith. Name that apple. So anyway, maybe we should. Drew was deciding between a Henry V cocktail for this month and something for Halloween with the Scottish play, but I was thinking, like some sort of appletini. He never does things so pedestrian, though. They're always very complicated and interesting. Not complicated, just interesting. Anyway, Hannah, all I have from this end is some weary crab apples. Tell us. I know, but I love them. I do love them. Oh, I love little dried fruit. Anyway, so tell us about the apples and healing. Is it true about the doctor a day, one a day?
It won't. Well, basically, just eat an apple a day. They are just fantastic. I mean, the main benefit that you're going to get from apples are for your digestion and also your heart. But yeah, I mean, what we're talking about here is the standard sort of eating apples. Cooking apples obviously have got lots of goodness in them as well. But digestively, they contain a lot of fibre. So incredibly good for your digestion in that way, and obviously if you leave the skin on as well, you're going to get extra fibre from the skin too. And so because of that, obviously fibre is really good for digestion in the sense that it will help to move our food along better. If you look through some of the older herbals, you'll sort of see notings in there about, if you eat an apple before bed, it will cure most constipations.
What and do?
It's worth a go if you're constipated, But one of the really nice things about apples is if you stew apples, stewed apples are incredibly comforting and lovely and soothing and nourishing, really, for the digestion if you've been really poorly. So that's one way you can really kind of get the nicer things out of apples for your digestion.
Wow. Now, it has quercetin or CoQ10 or something in an apple. I feel like I just read that recently. But there's all these other nutrients that are packed in an apple and Stephen Colbert, which is a show that we have over here, has his questionnaire or something like that. And he always says apple or orange to people. And people get a buzzer if they say orange, because with an apple, you can put it with peanut butter, you can put it with cheese. There's more variety to how you get your apple a day. What? Peanut butter?
Peanut butter and apple?
It's really good, Hannah. Yeah. Right, this time I'm over. We're also doing the whole medlar thing. So anyway, and medlars actually were called apples as well. A lot of fruits. That's why you get pineapple, because a pineapple has nothing to do with pine trees or apples, really. But there you go. That's what it's called. So, okay, so we eat one before bed or one a day. Anything else? And stewed, do we get the nutrients and all the stuff from a stewed apple?
If you're really poorly and your digestion's quite weak, a stewed apple is really, really easy to digest. So it's a nice thing to take. But there are a couple of other things as well that here in Lincolnshire, where I am, there's a few notings in different places about using, and this is definitely not recommended, using rotten apples as a poultice for sore eyes.
Oh, wow. Well, rotten apples. That's funny. Okay. I think we'll skip that one now.
We'll definitely skip that one. But then sort of more particular, I mean, they really, really do have good heart benefits. So that's coming from the pectin that's contained in apples, and also the flavonoids that are contained as well. So flavonoids are contained in loads and loads and loads of different fruit and vegetables. It comes from the Latin flav, flav, which means yellow, basically. So a lot of our sort of yellowy, reds, sort of bluey fruits and vegetables all contain flavonoids, so you've got some good benefits there. And what happens with the apples when you eat them, particularly, and this is where the eating one a day comes in, what apples do is the pectin in them binds to cholesterol in the digestive tract. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, it kind of helps it to move along the digestive tract better, so it doesn't get absorbed as much.
So it kind of ushers it out. It's like a I don't know, companion to the cholesterol. Like, let me show you the door. Okay.
Out you go.
Out you go. If anybody is, I don't know if like. A friend of mine was just talking to me about high cholesterol issues the other day. That's something that you have to have checked to know whether that's the case for you or not. But, I mean, it's a great reason why they said an apple a day. And obviously, all of these sort of old sayings have a basis in truth, have a basis in fact. And the other thing is, now is a great season where you can go to farmers markets and orchards and all that stuff and you can even pick apples directly from the tree. Can you do that there? We do that here where we go and pick apples. Can you do that in England?
Yeah, there are some apple orchards, but there are a few sort of, I want to say sort of wild or sort of public apple orchards dotted around the place. There's one not too far from where I am. Haven't been to it, but it's meant to be quite nice, where there's lots of sort of heritage apples. But yeah, I mean, it's the nice thing about this kind of year, certainly around these parts in Lincolnshire where I am, is that most people, if they've got an apple tree, have got too many apples. So you will just find boxes of apples outside people's houses saying, "Please take." Which is nice. It's lovely. It's a really nice thing to share. So
that doesn't happen in New York City, and even if it did, you kind of go, "Do I want to take those?" Maybe not. Okay, well, see if you can find fresh apples from the tree, because a lot of times when you get them in grocery stores, they just taste bland, and like they've been so industrialized or whatever that they've lost their flavor. And sometimes, I mean, because as you know, I love experiments. I get a bunch of different apples and I try to remember which is which to see how they taste different. A Pink Lady Granny Smith is very sour, and you can tell those, but you know, Pink Lady and a Macintosh, and like I said, a Braeburn and a Bramley and all those kinds of things, and see what the subtle differences are. You know, there's all kinds of ways to have fun with apples. Learn to juggle. Anyway, okay, the line of the day. Don't let your coulter rust. The coulter rust that should deracinate such savagery. Thank you, Hannah. It's so nice to have you back. Do we have you next week? Next week. Oh, okay, great. And I will be back in a moment with the cards. Have a great week. Have an apple.